Welcome to HOA boardroom battles. The board picked the wrong week to play games. She is screaming at me through the whiteout, her voice cutting through the wind like a blade. I decide what counts as cleared, not you. Carol Turner is standing 3 feet from my bumper with a clipboard in a clear plastic sleeve, jabbing her finger at my car, and behind her a tow truck is idling with its ambers flashing orange against the snow. The driver is leaning against the cab with his arms crossed, watching us like this is dinner theater. I have been home from my restaurant shift for 20 minutes, and I parked at an angle to avoid the ice ridge the plow left this morning. And now she is telling me the vehicle is blocking emergency access, and she has authorization to tow. I tell her the car is not blocking anything. The street is wide enough for 2 fire trucks. She shakes her head and taps the clipboard. Your paperwork is cute, mine has a letterhead. She hands me a violation notice printed on Whiteout Village Association letterhead, dated yesterday, claiming my vehicle was reported as abandoned during a storm, and I failed to respond within 12 hours. I never got a notice yesterday. I pull out my phone and show her the empty mailbox photo I took this morning. She waves it off. That is not my problem. That is yours. The notice says tow authorization is valid as of 6 p.m. and it is 6:15. The tow operator shifts his weight and glances at his watch. I look at him and ask if he has seen the actual signed authorization from the management company. He shrugs. Lady called it in, said it was cleared. I turn back to Carol and ask her to show me the signed work order. She smiles, the kind that does not reach her eyes, and says the communications director does not need additional signatures for safety violations during active weather events. I know that is not true because I read the covenant last month after she tried to fine me for leaving my trash bin out 20 minutes past collection time. The driver walks around to check the car and I can see him eyeing the paint and the lack of actual obstruction. Carol steps closer and tells me if I do not move the vehicle immediately, she will add a failure to comply charge and double the tow fee. I ask her what failure to comply even means when I just got here and the notice was never delivered. She taps the clipboard again. I decide what counts as cleared, not you. Second time she has said it. I make a mental note. I work nights as a restaurant manager, closing shifts that run until 2 or 3 in the morning. And the last thing I need is the Whiteout Village Association turning my driveway into a legal minefield. We are in Edmonton, Alberta, where winter is not a suggestion, it is a siege, and Carol has decided that I am her personal project this season. The HOA has always been aggressive, the kind of neighborhood where deadlines change depending on who is being targeted. But this year, Carol took over communications and turned the email blasts into tactical strikes. Every notice is a trap, every rule interpretation is a weapon, and she carries that plastic ice chopper tool everywhere like it is a badge of authority. The sun is setting early and I need daylight photos before Karen changes the scene. I pull out my phone again and start taking pictures of the car position, the street width, the plow berm, the tow truck plate. Carol moves into the frame deliberately and tells me recording her without consent is harassment. I tell her we are on a public street and she is attempting to tow my car, so I am documenting everything. She pulls out her own phone and starts filming me back. The driver looks between us and mutters something about calling his supervisor. Carol turns to him and says the authorization is valid, and if he does not proceed, she will file a complaint with his company for failure to execute. He scratches his jaw and says he needs to see something in writing from the property manager, not just the HOA board. She goes red in the face and snaps that she is the communications director and her word is the authorization. He shakes his head. Lady, I have been doing this 12 years. If there is a dispute, I need a signed order or I am not hooking up. She jabs her clipboard at him. Then I will call your supervisor and you will be off this contract by morning. He shrugs again. Go ahead. I am not risking a wrongful tow lawsuit over a parking spot. He climbs back into the cab and pulls out his phone. Carol whirls on me and hisses that this is not over, that I have been on notice since November and I am racking up violations faster than I can pay them. I ask her what violations. She lists them like she has been rehearsing. Failure to remove snow within 4 hours of cessation, allowing ice accumulation on the walkway, parking in a non-designated zone during weather events, and obstructing common area access. I tell her the walkway was clear this morning, the car is in my assigned spot, and there is no such thing as a 4-hour snow removal rule in the covenant. She smiles again. The board amended it in October. I ask where the amendment notice was posted. She says it was emailed. I check my phone and scroll back through October. Nothing. She tells me that is not her fault, that I should check my spam folder. I ask her to forward the email right now. She says she is not required to provide redundant communications and walks back to her car. The tow driver rolls down his window and calls over to me. Hey, you got a copy of your lease or your covenant? I pull it up on my phone and show him the parking section. He reads it and nods. Yeah, this does not match what she is saying. He tells me he is logging the call as disputed and leaving. Carol hears this and storms back. You are making a serious mistake. He waves her off and pulls the truck into a 3-point turn. She watches him go and then turns to me with a look that could freeze the remaining slush. You think this is over? It is not. I stand there in the falling snow, my gloves soaked through from brushing off the car, and I realize she is going to escalate. Carol does not back down. She doubles down. I have been in this neighborhood for 2 years, and I have watched her bury people in paperwork, call in favors with vendors, and twist every rule until it snaps. But here is the thing. I have been keeping records since November, and I let her call my bluff because she did not realize I was not bluffing. That night, I go through my phone and my email archives. I have violation notices with conflicting dates, photos of clear walkways with timestamps, and a spreadsheet tracking every interaction with the HOA since October. The first real escalation was a complaint log entry that is obviously written in Karen's voice, using her exact phrasing about safety compliance and community standards. But it is filed under a generic board email address, so it looks official. The second escalation was a vendor sent to alter something on my property without permission under the excuse of safety. A contractor who showed up in December claiming the HOA authorized him to salt my steps because they posed a liability risk. I turned him away, and he admitted Carol told him to document my refusal. I email my lawyer contact from work, a guy who helped us with a lease dispute last year. He writes back within an hour and tells me to keep everything, photograph everything, and do not delete anything even if it seems minor. He says HOA abuse cases hinge on proving a pattern, and if Carol is falsifying dates or authorizations, that is fraud. He also tells me to look for an invoice trail showing kickbacks or favoritism tied to the snow contractor. That stops me cold. I have not thought about the contractor angle. I start digging. The HOA uses a company called Northern Clear for plowing and salting. I pull up the meeting minutes from September and see Carol propose the contract renewal, and it passed without discussion. The contract is not posted online, but the vote summary mentions a performance incentive structure. I email a neighbor, a guy named Dennis, who sits on the architectural review committee and hates Carol almost as much as I do. He writes back and says the incentive structure is tied to violation reports. The more violations Northern Clear documents, the more bonus they get for quote-unquote responsive service. Dennis sends me a PDF of the contract terms. It is right there in Section 12. The vendor gets a percentage kickback for every call-out triggered by a board-reported hazard. That means Carol has a financial motive to create violations. Every time she files a bogus safety complaint, Northern Clear gets paid to respond, and the HOA pays them with our dues. It is a closed loop. I screenshot the contract clause and add it to my evidence folder. Then I go back through my photos and find something I missed the first time. In one of the violation notices, the timestamp on the attached photo does not match the weather. The notice claims I left snow uncleared for 48 hours starting on December 10th. But the photo shows my car covered in fresh snow with icicles on the mirror, and I have a timestamp photo from December 11th showing clear pavement and no icicles. Someone edited the metadata or recycled an old photo. I spend the next hour cross-referencing weather reports with notice dates. 3 of the 5 notices I have received include photos that do not match the reported conditions. One shows heavy accumulation on a day when Edmonton got less than 2 centimeters. Another shows my walkway icy and unsalted on a morning when I have a dated receipt from the hardware store proving I bought salt the night before and spread it at 6 a.m. The third shows a traffic cone stack dusted with snow sitting on my lawn near the curb, and I have never owned traffic cones. I zoom in on that photo and see a shadow that looks like someone holding a phone at chest height. The angle is wrong for a doorbell camera. The next morning, before sunrise, I am out shoveling the fresh snow from overnight. It is early, maybe 5:45, and the streetlights are still on. I hear footsteps crunching through the snow, and I look up to see Carol walking toward me with her clipboard and that plastic ice chopper tool. My gloves are wet and useless from gripping the shovel, and I can barely feel my fingers. She stops at the edge of my driveway and tells me I am in violation of the overnight parking amendment. I ask her what overnight parking amendment. She says vehicles must be moved to the street between midnight and 6 a.m. during active snow events to allow for driveway clearing access. I point out that my car is on the street. She shakes her head. It is too close to the curb cut. It needs to be 15 feet away. I ask her where that rule is written. She taps the clipboard. It was in the December bulletin. I tell her I never got a December bulletin. She says it was posted in the community portal. I tell her the portal has been down since Thanksgiving. She shrugs. Not my problem. She takes a photo of my car with her phone and walks away before I can respond. I stand there with the shovel in my hand, my breath fogging in the cold, and I realize she is building a case to either find me into bankruptcy or force me to sell. I call Dennis on my way to work and tell him what just happened. He sighs and says Carol has been doing this to 3 other people in the neighborhood, targeting anyone who pushed back on her email blasts or questioned her contractor choice. He tells me one guy already moved out because he could not afford the legal fees, and another is in mediation with the management company. I ask Dennis if he will be a witness if this goes to a hearing. He says yes, but he warns me that Carol has the board president in her pocket and any internal hearing will be rigged. He suggests I go over the board's head and file a complaint with the property management company directly, or hire a mediator. I get home that night around 2:30 a.m. and find a new notice taped to my door. This one is printed on bright yellow paper and says my driveway is out of compliance due to ice hazard, and I have 24 hours to remediate or face a $500 emergency fine. The photo attached shows a thin glaze of ice near the garage door, the kind that forms naturally when snow melts and refreezes. I salted that spot yesterday. I take a flashlight and go outside to check. The driveway is clear except for a small patch near the door, and when I crouch down I see fresh salt crystals scattered on top of the ice. Someone salted over the ice after it formed, which means someone was here after I left for work. I pull out my phone and check the security camera footage. I installed a camera last week after the contractor incident, a simple battery-powered unit that points at the drive view and the front walk. I scrub through the footage and stop at 11:50 p.m. Carol is there, walking up my driveway with a bottle of water. She pours the water onto the concrete near the garage door, waits a few seconds, and then takes a photo with her phone. She does not salt it. She just pours water, photographs the wet spot, and leaves. 20 minutes later, the temperature drops and the water freezes into a thin glaze. At 6:15 a.m., a guy in a northern clear jacket shows up, sprinkles a handful of salt on the ice, takes another photo, and leaves. I saved the footage to 3 different places: my phone, my laptop, and a cloud drive. Then I email my lawyer contact and attach the video file with a timestamp breakdown. He calls me within an hour, which is unusual because it is 3 in the morning. He tells me this is fraud and I need to file a police report immediately. And I also need to notify the property management company in writing before Carol has a chance to delete anything on her end. He says the video is gold, but I need to protect it and get it into official hands before she realizes I have it. I do not sleep. I write a formal complaint email to the management company, attaching the video file, the contract clause showing the kickback structure, the mismatched weather photos, and a timeline of every violation notice with my counter evidence. I send it at 6 a.m. and copy Dennis and my lawyer. By 8 a.m., I get a reply from the property manager, a woman named Linda, saying she is opening an investigation and suspending all pending violations against my property until the review is complete. She also says she is requesting a meeting with Carol and the board president, and she wants me to attend. Carol does not know I have the video yet. She sends me another email at 9 a.m., forwarding the ice hazard notice and adding a line about how repeat offenders will face lien action under the covenant. I do not respond. I just forward her email to Linda and my lawyer. Linda replies within minutes and tells me to stop engaging directly with Carol and let the investigation proceed. I feel a little bit of the pressure lift, but I know this is not over. Carol does not give up. She escalates. That afternoon, I get a text from Dennis. He says Carol just called an emergency board meeting and she is trying to fast-track a vote to authorize lien filing against me for cumulative violations. He says the meeting is tonight at 7 and it is technically open to residents, but she did not post notice anywhere. I ask him if he can stall it. He says he will try, but the board president is loyal to Carol and the other two members are scared of her. I tell him I am coming to the meeting. I show up at 6:50 p.m. with printed copies of everything: the security footage stills, the contract terms, the mismatched photos, the email trail. The meeting is in the clubhouse, a small room with a folding table and 6 chairs. Carol is already there with the board president, a retired guy named Ed who nods at her like a bobblehead. The other 2 board members, a woman named Patricia and a younger guy named Mike, look uncomfortable. Dennis is there too, sitting off to the side with his arms crossed. Carol sees me walk in and her face goes hard. She tells Ed that resident attendees are not allowed to speak unless recognized, and tonight's agenda is board business only. I sit down anyway and set my folder on the table. Ed clears his throat and says they are voting on whether to authorize lien proceedings against my property for failure to cure repeated violations. He reads a list of alleged violations, all of them from Carol's notices, none of them accurate. I raise my hand. Ed ignores me. Patricia shifts in her seat and says she wants to hear my side before they vote. Carol snaps that there is no requirement for resident input during enforcement votes. Dennis stands up and says actually the bylaws require a hearing before lien action, and if they vote without one, the management company will reverse it. Ed looks at Carol. She sets her clipboard down and says, fine, we will do a hearing right now. Call it an informal preliminary review. She pulls out a 3-ring binder and starts reading off her notes. Vehicle obstruction on December 3rd, failure to clear snow within the mandated time frame on December 10th, ice hazard on December 18th, overnight parking violation on December 21st. She has photos for each one. She slides them across the table. I wait until she finishes, and then I open my folder. I start with the December 10th photo. I put my timestamp photo next to hers. Mine shows clear pavement and no snow. Hers shows heavy accumulation and icicles. I point out that the weather report for December 10th shows no precipitation and a high of -2. Her photo is from a different day or a different location. Carol says I obviously doctored my photo. I pull out my phone and show the metadata. She says metadata can be faked. I ask her if she has metadata for her photo. She does not answer. I move to the ice hazard. I pull out the security footage stills showing her pouring water on my driveway at 11:50 p.m. I explain the timestamps, the Northern Clear contractor arriving later, and the kickback clause in the contract. The room goes silent. Patricia leans forward and asks Carol if this is true. Carol says the video is edited and I am harassing her. I offer to play the full video file right now on my laptop. Ed says that is not necessary. Dennis says actually it is necessary, and if the board votes to authorize a lien based on fraudulent evidence, they are personally liable. Carol stands up and points at me. You have been violating community standards since you moved in, and you think you can waltz in here with some edited footage and play victim. I stay calm and say the footage is unedited, and I have provided it to the property management company and my attorney. And if the board proceeds with lien action, I will file a counterclaim for fraud and harassment. Ed looks pale. Mike, the younger board member, says he is not comfortable voting tonight, and he wants the management company to review everything first. Patricia agrees. Carol slams her hand on the table. You are letting him manipulate you. This is exactly what he wants, to delay and dodge accountability. Dennis speaks up. Carol, if the video is real, you committed fraud. If it is not real, prove it. Show us your metadata. Show us your authorization for the contractor visit. Show us the board resolution that approved the overnight parking rule. Carol goes quiet. Ed shifts in his seat and says maybe they should table the vote and wait for Linda's investigation. Carol snaps that Linda is biased and she has already received complaints about my behavior. I ask her to provide those complaints in writing. She says they are confidential. Dennis laughs. Confidential complaints are not a thing in HOA enforcement. Either you have documentation or you do not. The meeting falls apart after that. Patricia makes a motion to table the lien vote pending the investigation. Mike seconds it. Ed calls the vote. 3 in favor, 1 opposed, Carol abstaining. Carol gathers her binder and walks out without another word. Ed adjourns the meeting, and everyone leaves quickly, like they do not want to be there when she comes back. Dennis walks out with me and says I should expect retaliation, that Carol does not lose quietly. I tell him I am ready. The next week is quiet. Too quiet. No new notices, no emails, no visits. I keep the security camera running and I check it every morning. Linda emails me on Thursday and says the investigation is ongoing and she has requested Carol provide source files for all violation photos and a written explanation for the contractor visit. Carol has not responded yet. Linda says if Carol does not comply by Monday, the management company will recommend the board remove her from the communications role and refer the matter to legal. If you are enjoying this, smash that like button and subscribe for more HOA drama. Monday comes and I get a call from Linda. She sounds tired. Carol submitted a resignation letter this morning and named you as the reason. She is claiming harassment and hostile environment. She also filed a complaint with the township saying your security camera violates privacy laws. I ask Linda if that has any merit. Linda says no. Your camera is on your property and points at your driveway. It is completely legal. But Carol is trying to create noise and muddy the water. Linda tells me the board accepted her resignation effective immediately, and they are appointing an interim communications director, and they want to hold a mediation session to resolve the outstanding issues and prevent further litigation. I agree to mediation. Linda sets it up for the following Wednesday with a neutral third party, a retired lawyer named Mr. Callahan, who specializes in HOA disputes. The session is scheduled for 6 p.m. at the clubhouse. I bring my lawyer contact, a guy named Aaron, who agrees to sit in as my advisor. Dennis comes too as a witness. Carol shows up with Ed and a woman I have never seen before, who introduces herself as Carol's sister and personal advocate. Mr. Callahan is a calm, gray-haired man with a briefcase full of printed bylaws and case summaries. He starts by laying out the ground rules. Everyone gets to speak, no interruptions, no personal attacks, and the goal is to reach a binding resolution that prevents further action on both sides. Aaron goes first. He presents the security footage, the contract kickback clause, the mismatched weather photos, and the timeline of false notices. He explains that Carol used her position to fabricate violations and financially benefit the contractor, and that her actions meet the legal definition of fraud. He requests that all violations be voided, all fines be refunded, and the HOA issue a written reversal clearing my record. He also requests that Carol be permanently barred from any HOA enforcement role and that the board adopt new transparency requirements for contractor relationships. Carol's sister tries to interrupt and Mr. Callahan holds up a hand. She will get her turn. Aaron finishes by saying that if the HOA does not agree to these terms, I will file a civil suit for harassment, fraud, and emotional distress, And I will also file a complaint with the Provincial Real Estate Authority regarding the management company's oversight failure. Mr. Callahan turns to Carol. She pulls out her own folder and starts reading a prepared statement. She claims I have been hostile and uncooperative since moving in, that I have violated multiple rules, and that the security footage is selectively edited to make her look bad. She says the water bottle incident was her attempting to test the drainage after I complained about ice, and the contractor visit was a legitimate safety check. She says I am retaliating against her for doing her job, and she is the real victim here. Aaron lets her finish and then asks her to provide the source files for the violation photos. She hesitates and says she does not have them anymore, that her phone was reset. Aaron asks her to provide the board resolution authorizing the overnight parking rule. She says it was a verbal policy update. Mr. Callahan stops her. Verbal policy updates are not enforceable under your bylaws. Carol argues that the board has discretion during weather emergencies. Mr. Callahan shakes his head. Discretion requires documentation. If you issued penalties without written authorization, those penalties are void. Dennis speaks up and says he has attended every board meeting since September, and there was never a vote on overnight parking or a 4-hour snow clearing rule. He says Carol sent those rules out in emails without board approval and used them to justify violations. Ed, sitting next to Carol, looks at the table and does not say anything. Mr. Callahan asks Ed directly if he approved the rules. Ed mumbles that Carol handled communications and he trusted her judgment. Mr. Callahan writes something down and says that is a governance failure and the board is jointly liable. Carol's sister tries to defend her and Mr. Callahan cuts her off. This is not a trial. This is mediation. The facts are clear. Your sister issued unenforceable penalties, falsified evidence, and used her position to create a conflict of interest with a contractor. The only question now is what remedy satisfies both parties and avoids litigation. Mr. Callahan proposes a settlement, all violations voided, all fines refunded, a written reversal from management with a real citation, Carol permanently removed from any HOA role. The board agrees to adopt a new contractor oversight policy, and both sides sign a mutual non-disparagement agreement. Carol refuses. She says she will not sign anything that implies wrongdoing. Aaron says then we go to court, and I add punitive damages. Mr. Callahan looks at Carol and says if this goes to court, the video footage will be entered as evidence, and you will be facing fraud charges, not just a civil suit. Do you want that? Carol's sister whispers something to her. Carol sits back and crosses her arms. Fine, but I want the video destroyed. Aaron says no. The video stays as evidence in case you attempt further action. Mr. Callahan says the video will be sealed as part of the settlement and not publicly released unless there is a breach. Carol agrees. Ed agrees. Mr. Callahan drafts the settlement terms on his laptop and prints 3 copies. Everyone signs. I walk out of that meeting with a signed document voiding every violation, a refund check for $800 in bogus fines, and a written reversal from management with a real citation clearing my record. Carol walks out in silence, and I never see her at another board meeting. Linda emails me the next day and says the board has voted to terminate the Northern Clear contract and rebid the snow removal work with new transparency requirements. She also says the board is adopting a new complaint process that requires photo metadata and third-party verification for all enforcement actions. But the story does not end there. 2 weeks later, I am standing in my driveway at dusk, shoveling the fresh snow from another overnight storm, and I see headlights coming down the street. It is a tow truck. Same company, different driver. He pulls up and rolls down his window. You the guy with the Honda? I say yes. He says he got a call about an abandoned vehicle at this address. I tell him the car is not abandoned, it is mine, and I am standing right here. He looks at his tablet and frowns. Yeah, the call came in from a Carol Turner. Says the vehicle is unregistered and blocking the street during a weather emergency. I feel my blood pressure spike. I pull out my phone and call Aaron. He picks up on the second ring. I explain what is happening. He tells me to ask the driver for the written authorization and the name of who signed it. I ask. The driver scrolls through his tablet and says the authorization came through their dispatch system. No signature. Just a phone call logged at 4:30 p.m. today. Aaron tells me to inform the driver that Carol Turner is not authorized to request tows, that she resigned from the HOA board, and that any tow attempt will be considered wrongful and the company will be liable. I repeat this to the driver. He looks at me, looks at his tablet, and says, "Hold on." He makes a call. 5 minutes later, he hangs up and says his supervisor confirmed that Carol's name is flagged in their system as unauthorized and he is canceling the call. He apologizes and drives away. I call Linda immediately and tell her what happened. She sighs and says Carol is in breach of the settlement agreement and the management company is going to pursue a restraining order. She tells me to document everything and not engage if Carol contacts me again. That is when I decide to go nuclear. I pull the security footage from tonight and every night since the mediation. I find 3 more incidents. Carol driving past my house slowly at night, Carol standing at the end of my driveway taking photos with her phone, and Carol talking to the tow truck driver earlier this afternoon in the parking lot of a Tim Hortons 2 blocks away. I send everything to Aaron and Linda. Aaron says this is stalking and harassment and we can file for a protection order immediately. Linda says the management company is terminating Carol's HOA membership and referring her to the police for fraud and breach of contract. Within a week, I have a temporary protection order, and Carol is banned from entering the neighborhood except to access her own property, which is on the other side of the development. The board issues a formal apology letter to me and posts it in the community portal. Dennis gets elected to the board in a special vote, and the new contractor policy passes unanimously. The neighborhood group chat, which I finally join, is full of people sharing their own stories about Carol and thanking me for standing up to her. But the real payoff comes a month later. I get a call from the tow company owner, a guy named Rick who apologizes profusely and says he reviewed all the calls Carol made to his dispatch over the past year. He found 12 calls, 8 of them targeting me, and none of them had proper authorization. He says his company is refunding every tow fee and canceling the HOA contract after seeing the evidence packet. He also says he is testifying in a civil case another resident is bringing against Carol for a wrongful tow last summer. Rick tells me he wishes he had caught it sooner, that his drivers flagged Carol's calls as sketchy, but dispatch did not follow up until my complaint. That is the moment I realized the scope of what Carol was doing. She was not just targeting me. She was running a scam using the HOA as cover, generating fake violations to justify contractor call-outs and tow fees, and pocketing kickbacks or favors along the way. The invoice trail I found earlier was just the beginning. Linda later confirms that the management company audit found over $30,000 in questionable contractor payments tied to Carol's tenure, and they are referring the findings to the Provincial Fraud Unit. The final showdown happens in my driveway on a cold February afternoon. I am clearing the walk after another light snowfall, and I hear a car door slam. I look up and Carol is walking toward me, her face red and her jaw set. She stops at the edge of my property and starts yelling, "You ruined my life. You destroyed my reputation. You turned the whole neighborhood against me." I lean on my shovel and let her vent. When she pauses for breath, I tell her she ruined her own life by lying and fabricating evidence, and I only defended myself with the truth. She pulls out her phone and starts recording me. "I am documenting this harassment. You are violating the protection order." I tell her calmly that she is the one who walked onto my property, that I have not contacted her or approached her, and that my security camera is recording everything. She realizes her mistake and lowers the phone. Then she says something that stops me cold. "Your paperwork is cute. Mine has a letterhead." The same line from the first night. I smile and pull out my phone. I show her the screen. It is a still from the security footage showing her pouring water on my driveway. I tell her I let her call my bluff because she did not realize I was not bluffing. At that exact moment, a tow truck pulls up behind her car. It is Rick. He gets out and walks over. Carol turns and sees him, and her face goes white. Rick holds up a folder. Carol, I am here to serve you with a demand letter for 12 wrongful tow authorizations, and to inform you that my company is cooperating with the police investigation. You are no longer welcome to contact our dispatch for any reason. Carol looks between Rick and me, and for the first time, she has nothing to say. She gets in her car and drives away. Rick hands me a copy of the demand letter and says his lawyer is also filing a complaint with the real estate authority about the HOA's contractor oversight. He shakes my hand and says he is sorry it took this long. That night, I get an email from Linda. The board voted unanimously to adopt the new contractor policy. The management company has completed its audit, and they are recommending the HOA agrees to mediation with a neutral third party to address governance failures and prevent future abuse. She says the board is also discussing a recall election for Ed, the president who enabled Carol's behavior. I reply and say I am willing to participate in mediation if it leads to real reform. 2 weeks later, the mediation session happens. The neutral third party is a different mediator this time, a woman named Miss Brennan who specializes in organizational accountability. The board attends, along with Linda and a representative from the provincial HOA oversight body. I attend with Aaron. Miss Brennan walks everyone through the audit findings, the fraud referral, and the policy gaps that allowed Carol to operate unchecked for over a year. She proposes a consent order requiring the board to implement quarterly audits, resident voting on all contractor renewals, and a transparent complaint portal where all enforcement actions are logged with photo metadata and timestamps. The board agrees. Ed resigns during the session and apologizes to me directly. The new board president is Patricia, who has been pushing for transparency since the beginning. She thanks me for bringing the issues to light and says the neighborhood is better off without the toxic culture Carol created. The consent order is signed and filed with the province. The management company agrees to pay a settlement to the 3 other residents who were targeted by Carol, and the HOA insurance covers the legal fees. The funny karma moment comes when I am checking the neighborhood group chat one afternoon and someone posts a screenshot of a notice Carol received from the township. She is being cited for running a home business without a permit, specifically offering consulting services to other HOAs on enforcement best practices. The irony is not lost on anyone. Dennis comments that her own paperwork is cute, but the township's has a letterhead. The chat erupts in laughter. Carol does not respond. She sells her house 3 months later and moves to another city. The new owners are a young couple with a dog, and they introduce themselves at a neighborhood barbecue. They ask me what the HOA is like. I tell them it is better now, but always read the fine print. The outcome is exactly what I wanted. The tow company refunds charges, voids my tow authorization, and cancels the HOA contract after seeing the evidence packet. Karen quotes minutes, and the actual minutes contradict her during the mediation when Mr. Callahan reads back her claims about board votes that never happened. Karen's bluff gets read out loud, and the room reacts when Aaron presents the video still of her pouring water on my driveway, and the board members visibly recoil. The HOA agrees to mediation with a neutral third party and implements reforms that protect residents from future abuse. I get a written reversal from management with a real citation clearing my record, and I frame it next to my covenant copy as a reminder that standing up to bullies works if you keep good records. I still live in Whiteout Village, and I still work late nights managing the restaurant. The winters are still brutal, the snow still piles up, and the plows still leave berms that take an hour to clear. But now when I park my car or shovel my walk, I do not worry about someone fabricating a violation or calling a tow truck in the middle of the night. The new contractor is professional and responsive, the board is transparent, and the neighborhood feels like a community again instead of a surveillance state. I keep my security camera running, just in case, but I have not needed it. Carol's reign of terror is over, and the people she targeted are finally free to live without looking over their shoulders. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.